Hello everybody and welcome to another Maya tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to import Illustrator files into Maya and bevel them and make them pretty. If you haven't seen my previous video about saving off the file formats and dealing with compound paths and stuff in Illustrator, I would highly recommend viewing that first. This is the file I have. I saved it as an Illustrator 8 file. I moved it up here so it'll come in the middle of my grid. Okay, so logically you'd think, oh, if I go File, Import, that'll work, right? Well, not really. It imports some curves, but not necessarily what you want. We want a 3D object. So I'm going to come down here to create Adobe Illustrator object. Whoops. And you want to click on the dialog box. It's always a good idea to reset your settings, just in case there was a weird setting that got messed up. If we wanted the curves like I just had, I would do curves, but I want bevel. Make sure it's beveled at start and the end, and that you have a cap on both. You can change these later, the bevel width, depth, and distance, and you can also change the style later. So I'm just going to leave it like this, and I'm going to create. I'm going to pick my AF file. Okay, so if you try to open your file and you get this error, go back and watch my other video because I deal with how to deal with that error in my other video. So, alright, so open up my good one, and voila. Alright, so here's my beautiful Autodesk logo. As you can see, it has a really heavy bevel on it right now. So let's adjust that. So if you come over here to your attribute editor, I believe it's this channel box, this is the attribute editor. Click this button if it's not showing. Then go over to Bevel Plus, and let's change the bevel width. So a little more normal. Pull that down. I think that's a little too much. Something like that. Just give it a nice little edge on there. And you can change how thick it is. We can make it like super cheesy 3D. Make it look like that. Make it look like a straight out of the 1980s. Drawn. Alright, just kidding. Let's move it back down to something normal. Alright. So, okay. So as you can see, our O's, there's a little bit of faceting. It's not very smooth, and we can actually up that number. It's in polygon output options, and you go down here to curve span, and we can up this. We can do it to about, I don't know, 18. Alright, so that smoothed that out. Now, one thing to keep in mind is, yeah, my font's messed up on this computer. Is that when you import stuff like this, you have a lot of polygons. If you're trying to keep your poly count low, I would recommend doing it inside of Maya instead of importing Illustrator objects, because when it bevels it, it creates a lot of geometry. So it's just something to keep in mind. This works for some things, but it's not right for every situation. So use it judiciously. And you can also, it can only do so much complicated output because it's polygons. It's converting curves to polygons. There's a lot of things you can do in Illustrator that it looks terrible when you actually bring it in. If it's too complicated, if there's too many points, because it views every point and divides it X number of times. So as you can see, I had to up the divisions on these curves because the way the Illustrator curves were, I had a point here, 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 and here. So it automatically calculated however many points in between the curves. But as you can see, somewhere where the points or the anchor points are closer together, we get super packed in geometry in here. So, which it works for this situation just fine, but if you're shooting for a low poly count, there's better ways to go. Okay, so we can change the curve styles. Just come to outer curve style and click the little forward arrow button, and you can pick your style. It's on straight out right now. We can do convex in, which does an interesting little curve there. Concave out, so it gives it a almost a ridge-like quality to it. Concave in, straight edge. That gives it a kind of like a embossed edge on it. Kind of interesting. And my personal favorite, convex crease. This gives it a nice little sharp ridge in the middle. So I'm going to leave it like that, and then I'm going to change the inner style to the same style, convex crease. And there's a lot of options there, so just play around and figure out the one you like. And then once you change the style, you might say, well, I want it to be a bigger bevel now. Up these numbers a little bit. Whatever looks good to you. Alright, so that's the basics of how to import objects from Illustrator into Maya and make them 3D. Oh, another thing to keep in mind is if you want to treat each of these letters as a separate object, you can just go here to Mesh, Separate. Now each of these letters are its own object. I can say I want, oh, that's another thing to keep in mind is that it puts the pivot down there, so I'm going to modify center pivot. So I can move these up or down or whatever. Make it look like the letters are falling. Whatever floats your boat. But that's how you can treat them as separate objects, is just select your mesh that you brought in and go to Mesh Separate. That way you can do coloring and placement and other things to it without having to save off multiple Illustrator files and then have to import them one at a time. Okay, so that's the basics on bevel output and importing Illustrator objects. In the next video, I'll show some materials and lighting and some other basic, so you can set up a basic scene, a basic set, so you can take some nice pictures of your logo. Alright, and I hope to see you all there.